Welcome to our deep dive into the idea of tariffs by the USA. Tariffs, simply put, are taxes imposed on imported goods. They have been a key tool in the United States' economic and trade policy for centuries. In this video, we'll explore why the USA uses tariffs, how they work, and their impact on both the American economy and global trade. Let's start by understanding what tariffs are and why they matter in international commerce. As we move forward, you'll see how tariffs shape the way countries interact and compete on the world stage. The concept of tariffs in the United States dates back to the country's founding. Early American leaders saw tariffs as a way to protect fledgling industries from foreign competition. By taxing imported goods, they hoped to encourage Americans to buy domestically produced products. Over time, tariffs became a major source of government revenue before the introduction of income tax. This historical context is crucial for understanding why tariffs remain a powerful policy tool for the USA today. Tariffs function as taxes on imported goods. When a product enters the United States from another country, a tariff increases its price. This makes imported goods less competitive compared to those made in the USA. The government collects the tariff revenue, which can be used for public spending. However, the increased cost often gets passed on to consumers, leading to higher prices for certain products. Understanding this mechanism is key to grasping the broader effects of tariff. One of the main reasons the USA imposes tariffs is to protect domestic industries. By making foreign goods more expensive, tariffs encourage consumers to buy American-made products. This can help local businesses grow and create jobs. Industries like steel, textiles, and agriculture have historically benefited from tariff protection. However, this approach can also lead to trade tensions with other countries, as they may retaliate with their own tariffs. Before the federal income tax was established, tariffs were a primary source of revenue for the U.S. government. By taxing imports, the government could fund public services and infrastructure. While tariffs now make up a smaller portion of federal revenue, they still contribute billions of dollars each year. This financial aspect is an important part of the tariff strategy, even as the focus has shifted more toward economic protection and trade policy. Tariffs can influence a country's trade balance. By making imports more expensive, tariffs may reduce the amount of goods Americans buy from abroad. This can help decrease the trade deficit, which occurs when a country imports more than it exports. However, the effectiveness of tariffs in correcting trade imbalances is debated among economists, as they can also provoke retaliation and disrupt global supply chains. When the USA imposes tariffs, other countries may respond with their own tariffs on American goods. This back and forth can escalate into a trade war, where both sides keep raising barriers. Trade wars can hurt businesses and consumers in all countries involved, leading to higher prices and reduced economic growth. The recent US-China trade dispute is a prime example of how tariff policies can spiral into broader conflicts. Tariffs don't just affect businesses, they also impact everyday consumers. When tariffs raise the price of imported goods, those costs often get passed on to shoppers. This means higher prices for items like electronics, clothing, and even food. For families on a budget, these increases can make a real difference. It's important to remember that while tariffs aim to protect jobs, they can also lead to higher living costs for everyone. American businesses respond to tariffs in different ways. Some companies may shift their supply chains to avoid higher costs, while others might absorb the extra expense or pass it on to customers. In some cases, businesses lobby the government for exemptions or lower tariffs on specific products. The overall effect depends on the industry and how reliant it is on imported materials or components. Modern manufacturing often relies on complex global supply chains. Tariffs can disrupt these networks by making certain parts or materials more expensive. Companies may need to find new suppliers or move production to other countries. This can lead to delays, increased costs, and even shortages of some products. The interconnected nature of today's economy means that tariffs have far-reaching effects beyond national borders. When tariffs raise the price of imported goods, it can contribute to inflation. Inflation is the general rise in prices across the economy. As businesses pay more for materials and products, they often increase prices for consumers. This can make it harder for people to afford everyday items and can slow economic growth if wages don't keep up with rising costs. Tariff policies are often influenced by political considerations. Leaders may impose tariffs to appeal to certain voter groups, such as workers in manufacturing or agriculture. Tariffs can be used as a bargaining chip in trade negotiations or as a response to perceived unfair practices by other countries. The political dimension adds another layer of complexity to the USA's tariff strategy. The United States is part of many trade agreements that set rules for tariffs and other trade barriers. Agreements like NAFTA, now USMCA, and the World Trade Organization aim to reduce tariffs and promote free trade. However, the USA sometimes withdraws from or renegotiates these deals to protect its own interests. Trade agreements play a major role in shaping tariff policy and international economic relations. There are different economic theories about tariffs. Some economists argue that tariffs protect jobs and industries, while others believe they distort markets and hurt consumers. The debate over tariffs is as old as economics itself, with strong arguments on both sides. Understanding these theories helps explain why tariff policy is so controversial and why it changes over time. Protectionism is the economic policy of restricting imports to protect domestic industries. Tariffs are a key tool of protectionism. By making foreign goods more expensive, protectionism aims to give local businesses an advantage. However, critics argue that it can lead to inefficiency and higher prices for consumers. The USA has used protectionist policies at various times in its history, especially during economic downturn. Free trade is the opposite of protectionism. It's the idea that countries should trade with as few barriers as possible. Supporters argue that free trade leads to lower prices, more choices, and greater economic growth. The USA has promoted free trade through agreements and organizations, but also uses tariffs when it sees fit. The balance between free trade and protectionism is a constant debate in American policy. In recent years, the USA has imposed new tariffs on countries like China, citing unfair trade practices and intellectual property theft. These actions have led to significant changes in global trade flows and have sparked debates about the effectiveness of tariffs. The impact of these policies is still being felt by businesses and consumers across the world. One notable example of recent U.S. tariff policy is the tariffs on steel and aluminum imports. These were justified as necessary for national security, aiming to protect American producers from foreign competition. While they helped some domestic industries, they also raised costs for manufacturers that rely on these materials, showing the complex trade-offs involved in tariff decisions. Agriculture is another sector heavily affected by tariffs. When other countries retaliate against U.S. tariffs, they often target American farm products. This can hurt farmers by reducing their access to foreign markets. The government sometimes provides subsidies to help farmers cope with lost sales, but the uncertainty can make it hard for them to plan for the future. Tariffs also play a role in the technology sector. The USA has imposed tariffs on tech products from certain countries to address concerns about intellectual property and national security. These measures can disrupt global tech supply chains and affect the price and availability of gadgets and electronics for American consumers. Automotive industry is another area where tariffs have a big impact. Tariffs on imported cars and parts can raise prices for consumers and manufacturers. While they may help protect American carmakers, they can also make vehicles more expensive and limit choices for buyers. The global nature of car manufacturing means that tariffs can have ripple effects throughout the industry. Tariffs on consumer electronics like smartphones, laptops, and TVs can lead to higher prices and fewer options for American shoppers. Many of these products are assembled overseas, so tariffs increase costs throughout the supply chain. Companies may try to absorb some of the costs, but often consumers end up paying more at the checkout. Small businesses can be especially vulnerable to tariffs. They may not have the resources to absorb higher costs or shift suppliers easily. For some, tariffs mean tough choices: either raise prices, cut costs elsewhere, or risk losing customers. The impact on small businesses is an important part of the broader tariff debate. Tariffs can have mixed effects on jobs. While they may protect some American jobs in industries like steel or manufacturing, they can also lead to job losses in sectors that rely on imported materials or face retaliation from other countries. The overall impact on employment depends on the balance between these competing forces. Some argue that tariffs can stifle innovation by reducing competition and raising costs for businesses that rely on imported technology or components. Others believe that protecting domestic industries gives them the breathing room to invest in research and development. The relationship between tariffs and innovation is complex and often debated among policymakers. Tariffs can limit the variety of products available to consumers. When imports become more expensive, some items may disappear from store shelves altogether. This can reduce choices for shoppers and make it harder to find certain brands or products. The impact on consumer choice is an important consideration in tariff policy. Long-term effects of tariffs are still debated. Some believe that they can help build strong domestic industries and reduce reliance on foreign goods. Others argue that over time, tariffs can make the economy less efficient and competitive. The true impact often depends on how tariffs are used and the broader economic context. Tariff policies can affect America's relationships with other countries. Allies may feel targeted by tariffs, leading to diplomatic tensions. At the same time, tariffs can be used as leverage in negotiations over trade, security, or other issues. The interplay between tariffs and foreign policy is a key part of the USA's approach to the world. Authority to impose tariffs comes from both U.S. law and international agreements. Congress has the power to set tariffs, but the president can also act in certain situations, such as national emergencies or unfair trade practices. Legal challenges sometimes arise over the scope of this authority, adding another layer of complexity to tariff policy. World Trade Organization (WTO) sets global rules for trade, including tariffs. The USA is a founding member and often uses the WTO to resolve disputes. However, disagreements over tariffs and trade practices sometimes strain relations with other members. The WTO plays a crucial role in the international trading system. Not all imports are subject to tariffs. The U.S. government can grant exemptions for certain products or countries. These exemptions are often used to avoid hurting American businesses or consumers. However, the process can be complex and sometimes controversial as companies compete for favorable treatment. Tariffs can have a big impact on developing countries that rely on exports to the USA. Higher tariffs can make it harder for these countries to sell their goods, affecting their economies and development. The USA sometimes offers lower tariffs or special trade programs to help support growth in these regions. Tariffs can also be used to address environmental concerns. For example, the USA may impose tariffs on goods produced in ways that harm the environment. These measures aim to encourage sustainable practices, but they can also complicate trade relations and raise costs for businesses and consumers. National security is sometimes cited as a reason for tariffs. The USA may restrict imports of certain goods to protect critical industries or prevent reliance on foreign suppliers. While this can strengthen security, it may also disrupt trade and raise prices for consumers and businesses. Tariff rate quota allows a certain amount of a product to be imported at a lower tariff rate, with higher rates applied to additional imports. This system helps balance the needs of domestic producers and consumers. It's a common tool in U.S. agricultural policy and other sensitive sectors. Anti-dumping tariffs are imposed when foreign companies sell goods in the USA at unfairly low prices. These tariffs aim to protect American businesses from predatory pricing and maintain fair competition. Investigations are conducted to determine if dumping has occurred, and tariffs are set accordingly. Countervailing duties are tariffs imposed to offset subsidies given by foreign governments to their exporters. These duties level the playing field for American producers and ensure that competition is fair. Like anti-dumping tariffs, they are based on investigations and can be a significant part of U.S. trade policy. Sections 232 and 301 of U.S. trade law give the President authority to impose tariffs for national security or in response to unfair trade practices. These legal tools have been used in recent years to justify tariffs on steel, aluminum, and goods from countries like China. Their use is often controversial and closely watched by businesses and trading partners. Tariff escalation refers to the practice of imposing higher tariffs on processed goods than on raw materials. This can encourage countries to export raw materials rather than finished products. The USA has used tariff escalation in some sectors to protect domestic manufacturing, but it can also limit opportunities for developing countries. While tariffs can contribute to inflation by raising prices, some policymakers argue they can also be used to control inflation in certain situations. For example, by reducing imports of goods that are in oversupply, tariffs can help stabilize prices. However, this approach is controversial and not widely accepted among economists. During economic crises, the USA has sometimes turned to tariffs as a way to protect jobs and industries. For example, during the Great Depression, the Smoot-Hawley tariff raised import taxes on hundreds of products. While intended to help, many historians believe it made the Depression worse by reducing international trade. American public opinion on tariffs is divided. Some people support tariffs as a way to protect jobs and industries, while others worry about higher prices and trade wars. Political leaders often take these views into account when shaping tariff policy, making it a topic of ongoing debate. Future of tariffs in the USA is uncertain. Globalization, technological change, and shifting political priorities all play a role in shaping policy. As the world becomes more interconnected, the challenge will be finding the right balance between protecting domestic interests and promoting global trade. History offers important lessons about the use of tariffs. While they can protect industries and generate revenue, they can also lead to unintended consequences like trade wars and economic downturns. Policymakers must weigh these risks carefully when deciding on tariff policy. Summary: tariffs are a powerful and complex tool in the USA's economic and trade policy arsenal. They can protect industries, generate revenue, and influence international relations, but they also carry risks like higher prices and trade disputes. As global trade continues to evolve, the debate over tariffs will remain central to America's economic strategy. Thank you for joining us on this exploration of the idea of tariffs by the USA.